But what I'm going to do is take you on a bit of an empirical journey to ask the question, how could we figure out, evolutionarily speaking, where do our biases actually come from? And my hope in doing this is to tell you a little bit of a case study. And the case study is aimed at making two particular points that I want to make about being human. The first point is one that actually Peter echoed when he first came out here. And that is, if we really want to understand what it means to be human, we cannot shy away from parts of humanity that we are not actually proud of. It's really easy to get up on the podium and talk about the cool things of being human when what we're interested in is the fact that we are moral beings, or we care about justice, or we have this fabulous technology. It's a lot harder to be up here and realize that we're a species so irrational that in a group of 1,000 very smart people, we have to tell 2 individuals to go out and shut their headlights off because this is the kind of thing that species do. But the point is that if we really want to understand being human, we have to understand the bad parts too. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is a slightly different point, and that's what's kind of illustrated up here with my monkey friend up there. And that's that if we really want to know about being human, it might actually make sense to figure out something about what it's like to be a monkey or to be a primate. And I'll try to illustrate that with the point I was going to make that some of you saw a little bit hinted before, which is a bit of an analogy. So let's say you're meeting somebody for the first time out there in the world. This is my stealing of XKCD, which is one of my favorite webcomics. But you're doing this sort of XKCD stick person thing. You're meeting for the first time, and you want to know something about the person you're talking to. What are some of the things that you might ask them? Well, probably you'll ask, what's your name and so on, but very quickly you'll come to a question that I find strikingly important when we're trying to figure out people, and that's, where are you from? I give this kind of lecture to groups of high school students, elementary students, all kinds of different cultures, and this question comes out in every spot. Why do we ask this? Why does it matter to me if you grew up in the Bay Area, or if you grew up in New York or in Sydney, or in the very same street that I grew up? Well, it matters because where we're from tells us something about who we are as a person. Knowing where somebody started can actually tell us something very, very important about where we are right now. And what I want to submit to you today is that if we really want to understand where humanity came from, where the human mind came from, we have to ask the very same question. We have to ask this question about, where did all of these nuanced things that humans do come from? And we have to pose this question both for the good stuff and for some of the bad stuff. If you're interested in doing this, though, you don't just have to philosophize about where these nuanced cognitive structures came from. We have these cool empirical methods to ask this question. One of those methods that you can use if you're interested in studying cognitive origins is a developmental one. So you can actually take an empirical approach to studying how children make sense of their world. You can actually study this little tiny guy on the couch. He's probably about 3 months old. But the cool thing is that we have methods to get at what this guy understands about the world. We can really ask him what he knows. And that's powerful because then we can ask how what that individual knows changes as this individual is immersed in a culture, as he develops things like language, as he gets exposed to things like teaching and social norms. That's one good way to ask this question about where humanity comes from, where the human mind comes from, to take this developmental approach. But there's another approach that you can take, and that's one that's not developmental, but in some sense phylogenetic. The idea would be that we could try to bring empirical tools to bear to study that guy on the side of our evolutionary tree. He's probably Australopithecine or something. We'd sort of ask him what he knows about the world, and then we could see how what he knows changes based on what we see across phylogeny, as we get access to things like human culture and human tool use, things that Australopithecine probably didn't have. There's a tricky problem with this empirical approach, though, and that's that most of the guys you'd want to use as subjects are actually dead. I've spent most of my career sort of searching far and wide to see if we can find any of these dudes, and they're all gone, sadly. And that means that, unlike the developmental approach, we can't take a direct approach here. We have to use a bit of a proxy. The good thing is that we have a fabulous proxy, and that's the proxy of studying our closest living non-human primate relatives. They're not our direct ancestors, but they're a wonderful window into what the mind might have looked like back in the day.